The coronavirus story.
Yeah, we've got a news just coming out first that's just been confirmed. It's the first confirmed case in the south of Italy, with Britons travelling to and from Italy's big cities being advised to be on alert.
Well, the Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, has said anyone returning from tourist spots such as Venice, Florence, Milan, Bologna and Turin should now self-isolate even if they have no symptoms of the virus.
Well, we're also getting reports of 1,000 holidaymakers in Tenerife being placed under quarantine after a fellow guest from Italy tested positive for the virus. So we're still waiting to hear how many Britons are affected.
So, as panic begins to set in across the globe, is there a way of containing this frightening threat?
And Health Secretary Matt Hancock joins us live from Westminster. Good morning to you. Let's start with you, first of all. Thank you for joining us this morning. So I guess the big question that everybody wants to know is the UK ready for a sudden impact of coronavirus?
Well, we've been doing all of the planning that is necessary. We are doing all that we think is necessary at this stage. It is not yet clear whether this is going to end up being a virus that essentially spreads globally, is pandemic globally, or whether we can be successful in containing it. But in the UK, we're doing everything that we can to contain the virus now, and we're putting in place the preparations in case it does become essentially a global pandemic. And so those preparations are in case it comes here in a big way, but the effort at the moment is also stopping that from happening. You know, making sure that whenever we find a positive test, we then get in contact with all of the people that person has been near. And the critical thing here is that everybody can play their part. Every single person, everybody watching this today, self-isolate at home. But also, everybody should be washing their hands more.
Well, you said that NHS staff and others will now be supported by additional legal powers. What are those legal powers? What's your worst case scenario? You said that NHS staff and others will now be supported by additional legal powers. What are those legal powers? What's your worst case scenario? Legal powers. What are those legal powers? What's your worst case scenario?
Well, we're working on the impact of the worst case scenario. We've already introduced laws to mean that we can hold people in quarantine. We've already introduced laws to mean that we can hold people in quarantine. We've already introduced laws to mean that we can hold people in quarantine. We've already introduced laws to mean that we can hold people in quarantine. But when there's an epidemic like this, we need those powers on a temporary basis. It means that, for instance, when we brought people back from the cruise ship, where there's been a very significant outbreak off Japan, those people have gone to Arrow Park in the Wirral, and we have the powers to ensure that they stay there. Those people have gone to Arrow Park in the Wirral, and we have the powers to ensure that they stay there. Then we've got the powers to ensure that that can be handled. So we have those extra powers in place now.
Is your advice, although obviously you have to be prudent, we have to be careful, we have to take our own precautions, maybe we have to self-quarantine.
That global pandemic, once it gets to that stage, it's very, very hard to protect Britain, and effectively impossible. But we don't rule out the fact that it may become much bigger than that, and we've got plans for that. And if we expect that to happen as the most likely thing, then we will communicate that.
Important announcement that I know you want to talk about in just a second, which is really quite important. So we'll come back to that in just a moment. That's about organ donation.
Sure. Yeah.
In the meantime, important announcement that I know you want to talk about in just a second, which is really quite important. So we'll come back to that in just a moment. That's about organ donation.
Sure. Yeah.
In the meantime, important announcement that I know you want to talk